Okay, so welcome again, everyone. Evening. Welcome to Health Series Part 1. And today we have the fitness coach in the house. One second. I hope you can see me or hear me clearly.
We can hear you fine.
Okay, good. Hi, Jake.
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. So we have the fitness coach in the house, and but just before he comes up, just some few house rules. If we could all remain muted throughout the session, because this is recorded, so that you don't interfere with the recording. And if you have any questions, you can post in the group chat. And Jake is here to answer all your burning questions about fitness. Yeah. So Jake, it's such an honor and a privilege to have you. We welcome you. We honor the grace you have and the grace you carry. So the floor is all yours. Rock on.
Thank you very much. I am honored to have the room, I guess, for the next hour to have a talk to all of you. It's beautiful to see everyone's faces, the names, and hopefully we'll get some time for some questions at the end as well. I'm just going to start with a little screen share. If we could
Oh,
enable that,
sorry.
that would
I
be
forgot
lovely.
to, sorry.
That's
Because
all right.
I'd already sent your profile, so I didn't see the need to. But just in case somebody did not see Jake's profile, so that you know the person that is talking. So Jake Bryant is all the way from New Zealand. So you can imagine he's joining us all the way from New Zealand. It's 8 a.m. where you are right now, and he's Thursday, 8 a.m. Jake
It
has
is.
over 7 years experience in coaching, and he's the founder of PHM, that is Progress Habits and Mindset. His passion lies in health, business, and community to empower others through honest conversations, structured systems, and accountability to see success. His commitment to health was deeply shaped by personal experiences, losing his father to a heart attack, and working alongside with his mom through cancer and having an ankle reconstruction as well. And these moments reinforced a powerful truth: without health, everything else falls away, which is very true. Jake believes in the strength of mind, body, and strength, but also in the responsibility to take action and see change over time that impacts people positively. Jake has managed gyms, he's worked in events, he's run international businesses, spoken around the world, and continues to develop himself. Personally, he's passionate about music, worked in events, spoken around the world. Where's my thing acting up? Personally, he's passionate about music, values lifelong learning, and living simply with high expectations for life simple moments. Jake took us at the Thunder Academy last year, and I was really blown away. He's very, very good. So I asked him to kindly come and talk to us about fitness. So it's such an honor and a privilege to have you, Jake. So please rock on.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm just going to share a PowerPoint if that's okay as well. If we can just do the screen share, that would be lovely. Cool. Um, would you be able to enable the screen share, Lillian, just for the Zoom meeting, please? Amazing. Thank you.
So I've made you co-host so
Mm,
you can, you know.
perfect. Thank you. Just to confirm, you guys can all see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Amazing. Very cool. So I wanted to, obviously, I've got an hour to have a conversation with you guys about health. I'm very aware there's so many different perspectives, viewpoints. We're all in different areas, different ages, different experience with health. And one of the things I wanted to talk about is where and how can we make changes that will see us making little steps forward over time. So I've kind of called today's seminar Modern Wellness, the body you build today, the foundation for your future. And I put a photo of some ruins out of Italy as a reminder of kind of where life's come from to where we're at now. How much the world has changed, how much the environments and what's easily available to us versus what it used to be 100 years ago, 200 years ago, and so on. So, Lillian did a beautiful introduction. So I'll be quick, and this will be the only time I really talk about myself. But there's got to be some credibility, or I could just be a random dude from New Zealand who doesn't really have any context. So obviously, my name's Jake Bryant. I got into coaching at the age of 21. I'm now 33, so I've been in the industry for just over 10 years, on and off. And you might be like, why is there a rank photo of a foot just like sitting there? That was my pivotal moment with coaching, where in 2020 I slipped off some monkey bars and snapped an ankle. And I'd been a fitness coach for a long time, but I'd also grown up being extremely fit and healthy. I was always active. I'd done martial arts, I'd done sports, I had gone hiking and on all of these adventures. And it wasn't until I did this injury that I realized how complicated the body was. And it also gave me a viewpoint on why things take so long and patience, and how much you can focus in on the detail versus what actions actually get a good progress forward. So this ended up refining my business to what is now PHM, so Progress, Habits, and Mindset, which is basically the progress is taking action. When we take action, we figure things out, and we can read a lot and we can have these ideas, but making progress starts by taking those little steps forward. And so that's my main encouragement to people is, by the end of this webinar, I hope that you've walked away with a little one or two key pieces where you're like, I can do that, and make that change over time. Habits, when you guys take the action and you implement something new in your life, it forms a habit. So by taking the action, you're reaffirming it, it becomes a part of your lifestyle, and then it starts to frame your mindset. As you start to see those changes, you're the first-hand experience of those results, and then you can reaffirm what you've been doing and if it works or not. So the main question that I wanted to talk to you guys about today is, who are you? Health is very complicated, and but also quite simple. By doing more and by being active and strong, we give our body a stronger perspective. So I've put in here, because of this community and everything that Lillian's doing, I wanted to honor her as well and just say, amazing that she's prioritizing a health seminar and series along with some other guest speakers for you guys to have an opportunity to be in the fullness of who I believe God's created us to be. Our habits and our actions are a reflection of our reality. And I understand that we all go through different scenarios in life that lead to different outcomes. But when people look at me, I often wonder, do they see a reflection of God, or do they observe me in a way that's different from the rest of the world? And so I want to throw that question back to you as well, into who are you, and what does an outside perspective view of you as your reflection of who God is? So there's a little bit to that. I wanted to ask a little bit about everyone's why. On a psychological level, we have so many aspects of our mind. Our minds are a busy place, and quite often the battle starts within that balance between taking action and then actually switching off priorities, or readjusting. And I'll talk a little bit about time management later. But this quote here, take care of your body, it's the only place you have to live. And we are, I think, especially in the rise of technology, we forget that the human body is organic. We're not a machine. We are influenced by the environments around us, the people, the food, the music, what we learn, and those things contribute to what your body is, and that includes your mind, it includes your heart, and obviously the physical representation as well. So habits of humans is where I wanted to start with today. I've worked with probably over 500 people in my coaching career now. Mostly I work with business execs, people who are running companies, people who have a very busy life, and are trying to find those parameters to make those like 1 or 2 degree changes in their health, so that they can be there for their grandkids, so that they can show up for future generations, so that they can be fit and healthy to run their businesses. And human nature is very interesting. We're naturally quite lazy as humans. We will do the path of least resistance and hope for the maximum result. And I think that that's just a part of our design. We're very efficient. You look at from the ruins to where we're at now. We used to have to go and hunt to get all of the food, and now people have that role, and it arrives in our supermarket. And so now we just go up the road. We don't necessarily have that what you would call the animal instinct anymore to go and do those things naturally. If we wanted to, we could stay at home all day and nobody would know the difference. And so I've started to notice that we usually care about others more than ourselves. And, in our day to day, how often are you prioritizing something for you? And that's extremely important because when you're healthy, you can show up. If your health is compromised, and this was one of the lessons that I learned when I snapped my ankle, is I actually couldn't do anything that I wanted to do. And it was a really interesting process because aging as a whole happens death by a thousand cuts. It's very, very slow and you don't necessarily notice the changes. But in my instance, when I did my ankle, it just affirmed the fact that health is such a worthwhile priority. Because without that, the degeneration that starts to happen with the body, it catches you out, and it's 5 years is the average time frame that I see where somebody will think back and they're like, man, I used to be able to do that. What changed? And it's usually within that 3 to 5 year mark where things slowly have made change. So I wanted to ask a question to you under who are you? What motivates you? Who is important? Because if I can make it personal and then we can reflect, we can set the psychological aspect of just that little bit of motivation that if somebody's watching you, it might be your grandkids, it might be your siblings, it could be those in your work environment. What are they going to see your habits and what are those results that they're returning? And so, if I can anchor into that perspective, there's definitely the self drive that's associated with this. But uh, if we can leverage our environment to be a two-way street, I want to show up like this. I want to be healthy and strong because that's a representation of God on earth. I don't want to let God down, so therefore I'm going to do my best. And then in that process, we almost have this cycle where I give to God, He gives back. Because in that relationship, I'm reminded of how beautifully He's created reality for me to be able to take part in. Um, and then what changes can we make? So by the end of this conversation, I'm hoping when we go into the questions that there's going to be an opportunity for us to uh, raise some issues or concerns or complications that might just feel a little bit too big. Um, how do I do this? What does this look like? Because a lot of webinars, a lot of sessions, people tell you everything that's wrong or what to look out for, but they don't necessarily teach people how to interact. And one of my keys is I'm a very observant person. I love the details, but I ask a lot of whys. And so let's take the room. We're predominantly female in here. And what happens with our hormones? What are the changes that we can expect as we go from being young kids all the way through into our later years? How do we plan to make sure that we're going to be as strong and as healthy as we can be here by understanding the pillars that we can put in place back here? So be the best version of yourself for them and enjoy the results. Set an example. It's a bit of a fun one. You always see kids running around having fun at the parties, and I'm like, why did we lose that ability to have that fun? Why did we lose the ability for that joy to be able to play, roll around, go down the water slides, throw a ball? Whereas now, the reality is, especially with the advancement of technology, a lot of the older generation and even people my age now are starting to become so unfit and lacking the strength that the idea of going and throwing a ball in the park means like, ow, my shoulder, or I might pull my back. And we've lost the overall balance. So the purpose of today's conversation, because my strength is in like gym, strengthening, training. You guys have got another seminar on health, on nutrition, and then one on mindset coming up. So I'm not going to cross too much into that, but my focus for today is I want to just break down the body as a whole. So The spine itself is our support structure. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about a few different topics, and then at the end, I'm going to bring it all together. And hopefully, then we've got a common picture that we're looking at for an approach. So, I wanted to start with the spine because obviously, if we didn't have a spine, we can't walk, we can't move. It's this beautiful building block that allows us to be able to interact with reality. It supports the body, all of the nerves run through it. It's what allows our muscles to move. And I don't know if you guys have ever noticed, but when you sit down for a really long period of time, you've got to get up, kind of lengthen yourself out, have a bit of a stretch. And one thing that's happening a lot in today's day and age is we're spending so much time seated. Our overall activity level has gotten so much lower than what it used to be even 10 or 20 years ago. It could be the advancement of technology, it could be the busyness of life and everything that's associated to it, but human activity as a whole is getting a lot less. And so that's the first key point that I want to just point out is one of the things that we can do to counter this is literally being aware and doing intentional movement each day. So the spine is this beautiful functioning block that stacks upwards that holds us high. It holds our posture, it allows us to move. You can see the different segments in this picture. So we've got the neck, mid and upper back, lower back, the sacrum, and the last little part known mainly as like the tailbone. Um, and these interact with different components of the body, and all of the nerves run through. And I know so many people nowadays are getting things like sciatica. A lot of people get like numb limbs, and a lot of the time, what's starting to happen is if I think about the building blocks that our spine is, when we compress, the space between those blocks is getting less. And so breath work, which I've put at the bottom here, is something that when we learn to breathe properly, it helps us to just open up the vertebrae in between the spine, and it just allows us to remember, hey, I want to be tall. We're built to be strong. We're built to be fit and healthy. Otherwise, God would have designed us different. So this is kind of the building block. It has shock absorption built in. It's phenomenal. So in between all of the vertebrae, you've got like little sponges, which are called discs, and they rub, they move, and they have the ability to turn any which way, within reason, of course, so that we can interact. We can turn and we can reach, and somehow these nerves and everything that runs through don't get triggered. So I won't put too much more detail into the spine as such, but I think it's a really good awareness because you might notice that due to your movement patterns, let's say your mid and upper back is very restricted. Does that then mean that your neck and your lower back are having to overcompensate to make room for the lack of movement as well? So when I go through and I talk about movement next, these are the things that I'm thinking about, that when I'm watching somebody move or I'm watching somebody reach, I can turn my neck this way, but actually my whole body's meant to move. So if I'm restricted in my upper body being able to move and I'm always just using my neck, and it's quite common to see as well, where people actually lack the range of motion to be able to turn from side to side without discomfort or feeling that pull or holding that tension in the body, which is why I usually encourage people with breath work first thing in the morning. It helps to anchor them. It brings them into their day, and it just reminds them, I've just come from a relaxed state. I've been in a sleep state. I'm just going to take a few big breaths. I'm going to think about my diaphragm opening up. And the way that I usually describe breath work for people is we breathe very chest heavy a lot. When we take a breath in, we see the upper move, but we don't often see the actual diaphragm moving. Our breath is like blowing up a balloon, that when we're breathing in, we're actually filling that balloon and it should expand. So we're taking that breath in, we're going, and that balloon is expanding. And then when we breathe out, that balloon is coming back in. And you've got this amazing muscle structure that is based around the human body. And in the top left picture, there is the abdominal muscles that sit in the front. And you can vaguely see the layers that are associated here with the body. And your muscles are what allow the body to be able to open up, to expand, to move, and to react. And they work very beautifully within a balance to the spine. And The one thing that I want to focus on as the whole, that if you were to take one key point away from today's lesson, is that when muscle gets weak or tight or immobile, what starts to happen is the spine structure has to do a lot of the work and the load for what the muscle structure is meant to be offering support to. So we often, especially as women, there's a really large difference between strength and mass. And I just want to clarify, when I'm talking about strength training, I'm not talking about getting jacked, getting massive, posing in the mirror. I'm talking about us feeling good within ourselves and being able to rely on our body. And a lot of that is done through intentional exercise. It could be done through Pilates, it could be done through walking. You might go out to the ocean and you're swimming, and all of these different arrangements that you can do fitness wise, like going on a cycle, on a bike. But these things all help to keep your muscular system regulated and moving so that there is a testing of load on the body that requires it to grow. So I've put in here muscle can grow. What is it that contributes towards muscle growth? It's resistance. Doing a movement under resistance creates those muscle fibers in that bottom picture. You can see the layers that are associated within those fibers to essentially, it's called micro tear, where they split, but then they heal back stronger and it creates that density. If you are building a bridge, would you prefer the weight of that bridge to be put on 5 single rods or 100? Most of the time we would choose the 100 because we know it's a lot more secure. So I use that same analogy towards our body, which is that if we train our body, we're essentially increasing the density of those rods within our muscular system so that we have the ability to be healthier, but it also comes across to creating force and absorbing force. If I pick something up, I'm putting a force on the body, and my muscle has to create a force to be able to contract. Absorbing a force is when I catch something or we drop something and we react. You're then having physics play on the body, and your body's working so beautifully to basically know how to capture that, absorb that force to keep you in that stable position. So as we start to age and we don't practice those things intentionally, it's not until we're caught out where something happens and we go to catch that ball out of instinct, or we slip and something happens and we pull a muscle, or worse, maybe the spine gets a bit sore. And it's a worthwhile investment with our health to do these things intentionally so that when the time of need is there, we actually have the resources to be able to handle the live environment. So I talked a little bit about head to toe here, and one of the things that I talk a lot on is our grip strength and our foot strength when I'm with clients in the gym, especially because a lot of our shoes nowadays have got so much padding in them. Our shoes are designed especially for women with heels where they point to these little end points. Yes, it's good for like booting the grandkids as they walk past and giving them a little scare for their life. But as we do that, what actually starts to happen is the design of our foot starts to go from this movement of this size to this little point, and the foot loses its ability to spread its toes. It's the feedback that you get with the earth. And so learning to do stability exercises, which might be something like standing on one leg and just seeing if you can hold that for 10, 15, 20 seconds is a really good balance point to see where your foot strength and your stability is up chain. So I want, even with the kids, like it's a fun exercise you can also do with people in the environment. I do it with a lot of elderly people if I'm coaching clients, and I've got a blind group that I used to work with that was low vision, and we used to do a lot of this training because they were always tripping over and they were always falling. And so the ability to know where they stood in space and that they could rely on the body was really, really important. And that came down to muscle strength and reflexology, because if we can't react quick, then you're going to fall through space and it's usually very comfortable. So the other side of that is if we do prioritize working on our body, then we do become very strong. It has a lot of massive benefits. So I'll show one last slide just around the muscle, just so there's a visual. Um, this bottom left picture is muscle density. You'll see that the first picture has got a lot more darker mass. That's your muscle density, and then fat is the white. And so what happens over time when people aren't active, you'll notice that the muscle density is getting less and less, and the fat quantity is starting to go up. Um, I don't show this to try and be like a terrifying thing, but I think it's wise to know how the body works. And I think it's wise that as we walk through these things, we understand the process that we're trying to counter, or it's used as a motivational anchor. So I put on here muscle is gold. Once you get above 30 and 40, you start to really notice people's habits in life and where their genetics and their efforts are. Up until that 30, 40 mark, we have youth on our side, where our body works really efficiently. We've got the cellular system, and it works to keep us fit, healthy, and alive. So one of the things I wanted to ask around who you are and what we're doing it for, is so that this slide has a metric for you to all work through. Um, when you know what your goal is, and let's just say, I want to be able to walk around the park with the grandkids, or I want to get into a sport, or I want to get into the gym. It doesn't even need to be health related. It could be simply I work at a really high environment and I need to be fit and healthy so I can show up for my job. So, what is the purpose of that? How do I test whether or not the things that I'm trying are working well? What does that actually look like? So, what is my intentionality and what am I expecting from that? How much time do I think this will happen? And time's a really interesting scale when it comes to training because motivation and habits are two very, very different things. And you might come to the seminar and say, I'm so motivated, I'm going to go all in. And you start training really hard tomorrow, you push really hard for a week, and then your whole body will remind you how sore it is every single day and every movement. And you're going to be like, it's obviously not for me. However, the reality of that is we've gone from 0 to 100 really quick in an unrealistic time frame. And so depending on where people are at and depending on their goals, what is a realistic time frame that we can go through so that we can achieve that long term? And for the average person that I work with, I usually set a 6 month goal. By 3 months, we start noticing the results. At 6 months, those habits have formed because we've been taking the progress, we've been creating the habits, and then now we've got that drive as a part of our life. So a lot of that time is actually education. So what I'm talking about today is more on the educational aspect because this is obviously only an hour session. I don't want to put you guys through a massive workout regime and put you through that when I don't actually have the ability to assess where you guys are at. You know, simple things of like, can I get my hands up above my head? Can I squat down comfortably? Can I rotate? It would be unwise of me to put you guys through a workout and then not be able to work through process with you. So education is the focus of today. Um, Cellular changes are something that none of us really see, but our actions are either helping ourselves to be healthier or they're helping them to break down, and the effect of that is especially seen over time. So my encouragement to you is those small changes that you make. It could be your nutrition, it could be your sleep, it could be the environment. Those things will contribute towards your overall well-being because what we consume is what allows us to be in reality. So what we eat will fuel what we can do. If you constantly have I know cars aren't necessarily the biggest thing over there, but if you have a Ferrari and you put 91 fuel in there versus the 100, eventually that car's not going to be able to operate at that output. So my question to you is, are you prioritizing your food? Are we aware of what that looks like? And I'll talk a little bit on that just next, but also your belief in yourself. I think this is a really huge thing. We as humans, and this is usually where the biggest wrestle comes, is we are the only individuals that are aware of our whole environment. Nobody else knows you apart from God like you do. And we so often remind ourselves of our downfalls of the things that we struggle with versus giving ourselves credit for our strengths and the things that we can achieve. And so, if there's anything that I can encourage you with today, it's the fact that you can make the change towards being healthy, being strong, showing up in a new way, making changes. I'll talk a little bit about injuries at the end, and how we can address that on different layers of scale. But do you believe in yourself that you can do this? And why is that important? So I wanted to go next. I made this as appealing as possible. Thank you, presentations, for being able to make things beautiful because it's not my strength. But food is fuel, and this will be the only, like I said, you guys have got a seminar on nutrition coming up. But the main area that I look at in old times was we used to have to eat to survive. We are now in a world of abundance where we can actually eat for health optimization, and it makes a really, really big difference. Our fats, our carbohydrates, our protein, minerals, and vitamins. And why is this important? Is because this is our gut. We consume food, it hits our gut, and it gets dispersed throughout the body. And our body is chemistry. Like I said, we're an organic being, we're not a machine being. We don't have the ability to click check systems and a computer program will run through and check every sensor. So, therefore, we have to rely on our body to know what it's doing. There's ways that we can do this through things like blood testing. I think that that's been one of the greatest advancements in scientific technology in a long time. Is it's almost like checking what's running in the body and where things are at. Um, but on a level, I always try and communicate with people because if I if I speak a really high game and a lot of people are going down the whole biohacking mark at the moment, it's a really expensive game. A lot of those things cost a lot of money and will take up so much time. But if you actually just put quality food into your diet, that is natural, not man-made, and add a little bit of exercise, you're going to see a really positive change in your livelihood over that 3 to 6 month mark. And we often overcomplicate it. So we put it into our brain, we assess our reality because we know everything that we do, all of our habits, whereas actually just taking two really simple things um, and actually making a priority change and allowing the effect of that change to make action in our lives is where I see the most encouragement with people. So, uh, time management. This is the biggest issue that I think most of us face today. Technology is taking away from our ability to be still. We used to be quite comfortable as human beings sitting around a campfire, talking with friends, and I think your culture is one of the most beautiful for banter. You guys laugh a lot, you guys have a lot of fun, you connect, you do these things really, really well. And I think it's wise that I compliment you on that because I know a lot of people who are extremely lonely, and a lot of people who have their identity based in their career. And these things relate to our time management, but it goes back to more of our priorities, which is why I asked that original question at the start. So, new skills take time. Um, there might be some things that I talk about today that you're completely unaware of. Uh, Write those things down and try and create a mind to hand to reality connection just so that you have a mental note to think on it. If I hear about something that I don't know something about, it's an opportunity that could make a difference that I'm not currently doing. And then it takes us time to learn about that thing. So we gain awareness when something is mentioned, but it takes a lot of time to then learn what that thing is and then also learn the factors that contribute to that thing. So if I was to add this into my livelihood, what other areas outside of my that focus would it actually influence? So let's say we start walking first thing in the morning for 20 minutes. I have a habit. I wake up at 6 a.m. I'm out the door by 6:30. I'm walking for half an hour and it's no phone time. It's there to get out in nature. And that habit in itself just helps me remind, thinking about my friends, my family, what's happening in my day. It allows me to reflect on yesterday. And that over time is really, really beneficial. So I've learned that a simple thing like going for a walk affects a lot of other areas. And that's the joys of going from being unaware to then learning to then teach, which is where I'm at today with you guys, where if I have an awareness and I'm not teaching other people of that thing and it can make a difference, I see myself as being responsible for that person's direction in life for not imparting information or having a real conversation. So I know that's a pretty high standard, but I think one of the things that we need to do is encourage one another. And a lot of the time that comes with uncomfortable conversations of this is my area of expertise. I notice A, B, and C. How can I help you with this so that we can make that change? How can I walk you through a time and a process from being unaware of something to then learning and then get you into the position where you can hopefully teach others. So um, you guys will get this presentation. I'll send this through to Lillian, but I wanted to give like actionable steps in a really, really clear way. I'll talk a little bit about stress relief in a minute, but basic starting points for people is just walking. If I can get people out doing half an hour, it could just be 20 minutes, it could be 2 lots of 15, it could be 3 lots of 10 minutes in a day, but just getting those steps up is just a really good moment for so many people to just get the circulatory system of the body actually flowing. We've got different stages of cardio, which go from just like your resting heart rate all the way up to am I about to die? Let's not spend too much time in that state and let's find a healthy balance between A and B. But it does so much more for the body than just being out for a walk. It encourages the body to do a clean out. It gets the blood flowing. It helps deliver minerals all the way through the body. And when tissue is healthy, blood can flow easily. When tissue is not healthy, it struggles. So things like saunas, things like exercise, it helps to, when you think about physics, heat expands, cold contracts. And when something gets stuck, it usually takes a lot more effort to get that thing to move again than it is to maintain and look after it properly. So that's where the encouragement of the habits from as soon as possible to moving forward are really beneficial. Resistance training, 2 to 3 times a week. Like I said, it's a moving scale and it depends on your reality. So a lot of the time, people, especially in the business world, their week to week is very, very busy. And in that case, when I say 2 to 3 times a week, isn't actually reasonable for a lot of people. So I say, well, let's shift that parameter to let's say 4 times a fortnight. And they're like, I can't do that. I'm like, well, how about 8 times a month? And so by the scale versus your reality, I'm trying to shift the parameters because you might have one quiet week and you get 5 workouts in that one week. You then actually only have to get 2 more in for the whole month, and that's actually achievable. So we so often when something is brought to our perspective, we try and put so much structure to it, and if we break that structure, then it's out the door. One of the beautiful things about awareness is we have the ability to adjust as we go. And I think humans are amazing at that. We do a really, really good job. So, why the resistance training? Like I talked about, the number of fibers inside the muscle. We have larger muscles. Our legs are extremely strong. We've got our glutes, our back, our core muscles, and then obviously our arms. But the stronger that is also the higher metabolic function that we can have. And what I mean by that is if you only have 10 rods inside that muscle group and you're putting that to work each day, then your calorie output is associated to those 10. If you have, let's say, 100 rods, your calorie output is feeding those 100, which means that you're actually outputting more for doing less work. And so the encouragement of being strong and having muscle density is you actually, as time goes on, you actually have to do less and you maintain those results. So if there's an encouragement of a leverage in less is more, then do a little bit of hard work regularly now because in the long run, it'll really set you up for a healthy way of life as we set those examples for those around us. Less processed foods. If it lasts on the shelf, imagine what it does in your gut. So as we're going through the supermarket and we're getting those lovely mac and cheeses that have got the expiry date of 2027, it's probably going to be really hard for our body to extract the nutrients that it needs from that food. And predominantly, most of it's probably chemical. And so, what then happens when that hits the intestines? What happens when it reacts with the stomach acid? What happens as that absorbs into the bloodstream and goes around the body? How much of that can the body actually use to be healthy, refuel, repair in your sleep, and then give you a healthy output of energy? Um, and so my friends always wind me up and give me a lot of stick because they say I basically eat for the numbers. I do enjoy really good food, but I do try and keep 80% of my routine and my diet to actually being systematical because I want to make sure that my food is whole food. I want to make sure I'm prioritizing my protein and my fat. And then I want to leverage my carbohydrates so that it actually uses it effectively for recovery and energy in the day. Um, Stress relief, mind, emotion, balance, and regulation. This is a really big one, especially for young kids growing up. I don't know whether it's that they're just not getting out and playing as much as they used to as kids, but also a lot of dopamine with screen time. The wiring of people's brains seem to be able to regulate less efficiently. It could be our jobs and the environments that we're in have our ceiling up here for stress. It's just a building pot. And how do we regulate that? Well, the walking's a really nice way. There's a 10-minute block where it's you prioritizing yourself. You're getting outside, you're breathing in fresh air. It could be cold, but it reminds you you're alive. It could be extremely hot, but then you're getting to sweat out and actually let the body detox as well. So, what are some of the things, and when you reflect on yourself at the end of the day, how do I feel? If I was to do this for the next 20 years, does that give me this anxious feeling or am I confident? Those little self-awareness things about bringing yourself back towards yourself is to be able to manage your state of being. Because just as much as we have our physical reality, we also have our mental and emotional self as well. And I think it's wise to perceive all of those. Community, like I said, you guys do amazing at this, and it was really, really fun watching Lillian when we were at the academy. You know, she's always on the phone, she's talking to you guys, and I think it's such a beautiful thing when people were willing to share. You talk, you laugh, you have fun. What that does on an emotional level, what that does towards your perspective on life is really, really important towards longevity. And then the last little point I've put in here is do that for them. So set an example for others. So your action tells the story. What are you doing? How are we going about it? How do we make it fun? Because like I said, kids do things a lot because it's fun, and you do a lot more and you maintain consistency if you enjoy it. So like I said before, training types, Pilates, walking, swimming, out on a bike. It could be something like archery. It could be all of these different avenues that fitness might look like. If you can make it fun, it's more likely to last. So, um, your body is the avenue you have the privilege of engaging reality through. Obviously, we are a triune being, body, soul, spirit. But I wanted to just end on that aspect because our bodies are amazing and they run 24/7 for us. They're designed beautifully, and the least that we can do is say thank you. We can honor the body, we can give it what it needs, we can do things that lead to a higher chance of success, and we can put ourselves in intentional environments where we're more likely to succeed than an environment that maybe we haven't collaborated with people in. So that is a quick presentation just on what that might look like in your day to day. And I'll open the floor for questions and just see if there's anything that kind of has sparked. Otherwise, I'll talk a little bit on kind of just some routine exercises that are really good for the body as well. So, if there are any questions, then more than welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Jake. That was a wonderful session. If anybody has any question for this first part before he goes ahead, could you just put it in the group chat? Or if you want to raise your hand, by all means, feel free to raise your hand as well. I just wanted to ask a question. So, you mentioned, and thank you so much. It was an amazing. I like the fact that you said that hit me when you said take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live.
Mm.
So when you said that, that really touched me. I was convicted by that. So thank you so much. I am still learning. There's just so much change that I need to put in place as well. But my question is on breathing.
Yes.
So you mentioned the importance of breathing and how it affects the spine and all of that. But while
Hmm.
you were saying it, we couldn't really see. So if you could just like demonstrate
Totally.
what that means. I mean, how do you do it in a practical sense?
Totally. I'll just adjust the desk and I'll give you a bit of a visual. 1 second. I'm about to get really short or tall. Okay. So our breath work and our diaphragm here is a lot of the
Yeah.
time our muscles, as we contract down and we spend so much time seated, our bodies will strengthen to the place that we spend the most time in. And what that then means is if we're always hunched over, by the time we try and stand up, can we actually expand the body and open up that diaphragm? Um, what starts to happen is when we
Okay.
breathe and we take this breath, we're trying to expand our stomach, we're trying to breathe into the back of our rib cage, and then as we breathe out,
Hmm.
we're almost pulling our belly button in towards our spine. Um, the muscle system itself, when we breathe out, it's a contraction. We're trying to pull that vacuum because the diaphragm muscles are something called intramuscular tension, which is where you have the synergy across all of your muscles, but your diaphragm is essentially the layers beneath your core. And because that core gets so tight for so many people, and when we go into things like pelvic floor health as well, and we go into the breathing regulation of always being seated, a lot of us have lost the ability for that free movement to happen between our breath and the muscles because they've become so tight. So a healthy muscle, we start and its end range is here, it contracts, and then it should return back to that starting point. If you imagine that your core is constantly
Yeah.
in that contracted state, eventually it tightens to that position. And so when you're trying to breathe, you're trying to breathe through something that's maybe just moving this much versus learning to breathe and go, oh man, there's that stretch that felt really, really good. My whole body's lengthened out. I've opened that up and I've contracted back to that normal state. So there's a bit of an art to it, which is uh, if you go to Pilates or you do something like Reform, they talk about balancing a bowl, and so it's about finding that balance over your hips, having your breath work so that as you breathe in and that balloon expands, your body should be going taller, it should be going wider. If I think about going extreme, I can breathe in and I can really get that belly to expand. And then I can
Hmm.
intentionally breathe in, and it's almost like a vacuum. You're pulling that core back towards the spine.
Okay.
And that's not how you should breathe 24/7. It's an exercise. You're trying to get that diaphragm, those muscles to open up. But what that does as well is by taking those breaths, you've got what's called your vagus nerve, which runs through the lung, and it's part of your stress relief system. So breathing is actually designed
Okay.
to help us relieve stress. And so by allowing us to just go, ah, that's right. This is what it feels like to be relaxed. This is what it feels like to recenter myself when I talk about the self-regulation. So a lot of the breath work's really important for that.
Okay. Brilliant. So in terms of the breathing, it's not how long. You don't have to do it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes.
I think I think it's a very good practice to spend probably a minute or 2 minutes a day. But it's not
Okay.
about breathing to the point where you're going to pass out. There's a lot of like the Wim Hof method, which is your extreme breaths, and that's a different type of regulation. I do these base exercises, and especially with weight training as well. I'll just say this: when we breathe, like how I talked about the vertebrae, we create the space then we tense the muscle around it, and we're less likely to get those impingements that if we don't pre-take that breath, then the muscle system's actually compressed as we start the exercise. So breathing's also a good habit to
Wow.
use
So it's really
before.
important.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, cool. Thank you, Jake. Any other question before you continue? This is your opportunity.
Ooh,
Okay, and,
no,
and
we're
I have
good.
another question, Joe.
That's all right.
Um,
No worries. Heel pain
I have a
recently.
question on muscles. Okay, somebody is saying that she's been having heel pain recently. Do you know
Yeah.
why this is? I don't know how you answer
Um,
that question.
I
Yeah.
think a lot of once again, without being able to like actually walk through and see how somebody moves, there's a lot of different parameters when it comes to things like biomechanics. So the way that the body can optimally move is a way to reduce stress on the body. Um, I would ask whether or not this person is constantly wearing heels, in which case the heel will be elevated. The rest of the muscles in the calf are in that slightly shortened position, which then means maybe just a neutral heel position has become uncomfortable because that calf is essentially always in a contracted spot and it could pull on the bottom of the foot. Somebody might walk slightly duck foot,
Mhm.
or somebody might walk slightly inverted. And that comes down to things like glute strength. It comes down to maybe tightness in the back. I'll show you, I'll put this down a little bit so you guys can get a visual. So our back as a whole, if I pull this really tight, you can see I can overarch my back, in which case my posture is not
Mhm.
sitting neutral. I can also go neutral in my pelvic, which allows me to get a good plant down my feet. So one of the other questions I'll be asking if somebody has heel pain is this person naturally, is their center of gravity forward of the body, and is their lower back taking a lot of that effort, in which case the balance is on the toes, versus a small pelvic tilt, which puts my body back to neutral and I have the balance back in my feet. The biomechanics of like how the body moves is why I think doing these different forms of exercises is really important because it's quite complicated to like diagnose one key component, but by doing many different things, it allows the body to find its center balance point. Um, yeah, I hope that that helps.
Brilliant. I hope it helps. Okay, somebody else also asking another question. I just have one question before
Yes,
we read that question. You talked about muscles and the importance of muscles. And you talked about how the more muscle you have, the older you become. It helps to lessen the work that your spine has to do.
correct.
I didn't know that. So thank you very much for that. But so my question is, what would you recommend in terms of people for over 40, over 50 for muscles?
Yeah.
Just a
Um,
simple one.
Yeah, I think the main thing that I like to encourage people to do is like literally just a Pilates session a couple of times a week. It
Mhm.
reminds people to move, and it usually gives them an hour into their own day. Or even if you're at home and you've got a couple of resistance bands, you can actually do a lot of work with resistance band workouts too. You can get the ones that you can stand on, and you can do bicep curls, you can do shoulder presses with them. You can go into a hinge position and do like bent over rows. Um, and so even just like static training at home where you might go into like a half squat and you hold for 30 seconds and you just feel those muscles actually doing some work is just a really healthy place to start.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And someone posted a question. I'm just going to read that very quickly.
Yep.
The person sent me private, so that's how come no one can see it. Let me see if I can put this. So the person is saying, how do I do leg strength training at home without
Cool.
going to the gym? One or two specific moves, and they say they only have dumbbells. So leg
They do
strength
have
training at
dumbbells.
home. Yeah, they have dumbbells.
Amazing. A couple of my favorite exercises that everybody loves and hates is lunges. It could be the lunge pattern itself. So there's kind of five predominant movements that I would teach, which is a lunge, a hinge, a squat, and then push and pull for the upper body. So if we're just focusing on the legs, then we've got those three exercises. So we could do a goblet squat, which is where we hold the weight up here. If our core is strong enough and it doesn't cause pain on the back, then it's a really good way to keep our body tall. If we do struggle with back pain, then you can also just lower the weight center of gravity, which means that we hold the weight down here, which means less load on the back. So weight up here, we're working harder. Weight down here, we've got an easier plumb line, and we can simply just do those squats. But the legs are going to be working. Feel the range of motion, because a lot of the time when people squat, you'll see them go into like a butt wink at the bottom because they've lacked the range. So feel your natural position, because at that point the muscle's disengaging and you're swapping back into like the spine flexion and the tendon load, and we want to strengthen the muscle. There's a difference between mobility training and strength training, and sometimes those two can be mixed. So your squats, either here as a goblet or from down here, you can hold two weights up here and do those squats. If you have steps in your house, you can do lunges up the steps. I don't recommend doing them down, it never goes well. Or even just like a static lunge, which is where we just split the, I won't be able to sit past the desk, but we split the stance and we just hold. So I've got that foot back here and I'm just up and down in that, almost like you do in Pilates, that balance point. You'll feel the rotation of the hips. It creates stability across the hips. It works your glutes. And then things like hip thrusts are really, really good off the edge of a couch. You can put the body and then just lower your hips like your hips are a folding point. Hip thrust up, squeeze the glutes, lengthen the front of the hips out, which is a really nice stretch as well if we work at a desk all day.
Fantastic. I hope that answered the question. Someone else has posted another question. If you have questions, you can let us know. If you want to ask Jake yourself and you don't want me to read it, you could raise your hand as well. And feel free to turn on your cameras if you want to as well. So we're getting loads of questions now, Jake. Are you ready?
That's awesome.
So Aisha Atta is asking, are there exercises to slow down or reverse stiffness in the joints for people over 50?
Totally. Slow down or reverse stiffness. I think stiffness is like how I talked about muscles contracting versus being able to return back to that neutral.
Yeah.
Ways that you can use things like heat, like a sauna or those other environments to create that space, and you can leverage the benefits of a sauna to then reduce stiffness and reset the body back to its neutral. Simple things about like getting back to hands over head and being able to do that range of motion. A lot of the time people will get stuck here and then they use their back to do the flexion because they don't have the ability to get the hands over their head. So I usually do a lot of like base testing of just testing people's mobility versus where they're actually at, because we might be able to reach over one side and then we try to the other and we get stuck and we're like, oh well, why is that? And then you might be able to look at the hips and notice that the one side the hip can rotate and the other side the hip can't. And so when you're naturally reaching, this hip pushes one way. When you naturally reach this one and you get stuck, you actually notice that that hip hasn't moved. And by doing those exercises without load and just playing with movement as if you were a kid again, and just kind of having a dance and a bit of a boogie, a little bit of a test and a rotate, and a little bit of a shake, it actually just helps to like loosen that body up a little bit. So there's a really interesting trend going around at the moment in the fitness industry, which is that whole like shaking thing, and everyone's like expressing emotion in a really interesting way. You can do that intentionally, I think, without such an extreme environment, and just by that intentionality and how you move. I think those things, I think stiffness and like disc degeneration is mainly contributed because the body can't go through its proper range of motion and it doesn't have the support from the muscular structure.
Fantastic. Aisha, I hope that answered your question. Oh
Yes,
yeah,
it
good.
did. Yes, it
Okay,
did. Thank you.
that's good.
Amazing.
So we're just going to take two more questions and then you continue. So the next one is from Flory, and she said, "Hello, Jake. I've been training for years, for the last 20 years. The disc, for the last 20 years, the disc is my lower back. I don't understand. The disc in my lower back has worn. Now I find it difficult to walk for a distance. What can I do to get around that?" So this is all elderly, just to give you a bit background. Yeah. I mean, over 60, not elderly like that.
That's quite complicated. I think if there is disc degeneration, then it is complex. It's not an easy thing. Um, I think breath work or maybe a core brace might help. If it's specifically the disc, there's different types of pain. There's like a disc compression pain, which is like that specific, like sharp, local in the spot. There's nerve pain, and I think understanding the type of pain that the disc is causing is really important because it'll let you know kind of, is this localized? Is it maybe the disc is slipped and it's pinching in that spot? Or is it actually compressed, in which case the nerves are regulating out. A core brace or like having like a core belt that you put on, it could just be enough of a stimulus that helps you to remember to keep your core stacked while you walk. Because maybe what's happening is maybe the hips are just gotten a bit tight, and so your backs, you kind of find yourself walking like this rather than actually flowing smoothly on your feet. And I think if there is like really bad disgeneration, um, the breath work's really helpful. Sometimes with breath work, if it does start to create that space again, there can be discomfort, which is why I think just like if you have a local physio that you could work with, it's a lot more beneficial than trying things at home just on your own. Yeah, it's a little bit complicated, but creating that space, building a strong muscle system to support either side of the vertebrae and the disc is a good starting point.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
No worries.
And then the next question is from Lola, and she's asking, thank you, Jake. Very helpful presentation. And the question is, what exercises do you suggest to promote flexibility?
Cool. I think this is a really good one. When I first got into the fitness scene, I used to coach quite a few gymnasts. And there's a difference between neutral and being mobile versus being hyper flexible. And a lot of the flexibility is more people pulling on tendons and trying to get more range of motion to stretch versus actually having that neutral ability for muscle engagement and supporting the tendons and ligaments. So I don't usually do a lot of like flexibility or that sort of work with people. In all honesty, it's not quite my skill set. But I do spend a lot of time with people trying to get them back to neutral. And so that's where I talk about can I get my hands overhead and do a squat? Because what's starting to happen then is your muscle chain is at its lengthen point, which is if I'm reaching for something, my toes over there, that's the longest point that my body's going to be able to reach to. And I want to be able to make sure that in those lengthened positions that I'm not going to be compromised, causing injury. And I think if most people focus within that safety parameter, they're going to be better off than worrying about being really flexible. Simple things of just like, if I reach over, do I have spinal flexion so that I can just reach down and tie my toes? But I wouldn't lift this way because this is a form of unloaded flexibility versus when I'm doing something like a deadlift and my back is actually stacked properly so that I get a proper muscle engagement. So there's just a difference between flexibility and strengthening. So play with movement, and I think that adds to flexibility. But I also think when muscle is balanced, it creates a really healthy range of motion because there's less snag points, if that makes sense.
Does that answer your question, Ola? I take it as a yes.
Okay, cool. Amazing.
Just one more question. Okay, we're getting more questions now. Somebody said, Daya said, hello, Jake. Daya is my sister. Is jogging, running after 40 better than walking? Also, what's your take on strength training and spin classes? So that's two questions in one.
That's all right. I can answer it in one. I think the over 40, if somebody's got good muscle density, running's very good for the cardiovascular system. If people don't have good muscle density, it's a lot of wear and tear on joints. You're obviously doing like 100 like little impacts while you run, or 1,000 or 10,000. And so if you don't have the muscle to hold, then there can be a lot of joint degeneration there. I love spin classes. It's a low resistance, high muscle engagement. I think that that's really beneficial. You're hitting your cardiovascular, you're hitting your muscle engagement, and then you're also kind of getting a lot of other benefits from doing spin classes. But I think it's very good if you've got good shoes to run in, like with a little bit of padding, then it makes a big difference. So I always try and think back to like running on grass and how that feels. It has that nice soft resistance. It doesn't jar. Shoes are honestly getting really fancy nowadays, but I think losing a lot of functionality, which is why I have that concern, especially in a big city. If you're running on concrete, it's extremely solid. You could do treadmill running. That's quite nice. It's a low impact on the body. But I just think more about impact and that force absorption when I think about running. So if somebody's like quite springy naturally, but I often see like runners that like when they're running, they look like quite stiff.
Yeah.
You should actually be quite springy in your stance. And so if you find that you don't have the spring in your step, then I ask, why don't you have that spring in your step? Because that's your muscle being able to create and absorb force versus jarring onto the joints and all of the tendons doing the work.
Oh, brilliant. So you're saying if you don't have the muscles, you're better off walking.
Yeah, you're like you can build up to it, and that's where I mean, like in that
Okay.
in that slide where I said if it's a goal, and what's the realistic time frame, you can definitely build up to it. Um, it's slow, steady. It could be a balance between jogging, maybe one day a week you do a 5K run or a 2K run, and then you taper off and then you retest that and you work up to it. So the body's amazing at adapting and it's very, very strong.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jake.
Sorry,
If
Len, can I add? Sorry, Jake, just a
yeah,
quick question. So if I've been running for a while now, and
Yes.
can I continue? Because I know there's this whole thing about walking, that walking is better than running. So I already have that muscle strength because I've already been running for a while now.
Perfect. I think like there's no reason to not. The only thing I'd recommend is just make sure you complement the running to a little bit of 1 or 2 weight sessions a week because the muscle is going to be the thing that supports the running. So if you're
Yeah,
running as your form of exercise, but all you
yeah,
do is run and nothing else, then
yeah.
I would just
So
say,
I do spin, and I also do some
oh,
strength
sorry,
training as
one
well.
more time.
So I do spin classes as well as strength training.
Perfect.
speed and
Yeah,
strength.
yeah. I think you'll be fine. Listen to the body; it'll tell you
Yeah.
if it's going well or if it's not. And then the body's very good at giving signals if you listen. When you're a fitness-driven person, we are very strong in the mind, and we can often override those signals. So, realistically, listening to them, I think, is quite wise.
Awesome, thank you.
No worries. Well done on the running. It's amazing.
Thank you, Jake. So if you could continue, Shala, we'll take your question after the next one. And then if anybody wants to ask question as well, feel free to raise your hands. Yeah. So Jake, if you could continue.
Cool. What else have we got? There was just one other question in there just on the Pilates that I'll quickly answer as well. Pilates, from your experience, would you advise starting with reformer Pilates or mat Pilates? I think the mat Pilates, depending on people's wrist and hand strength, is very good. It teaches us to work from the floor up. Reformer Pilates has a lot more stability training because you're on an uneven platform. And so I personally really enjoy the reformer, but I do a lot of stability training in my everyday stuff. So I think just that balance point of can you spend the time on the wrists? Can you hold those static positions easier? Otherwise, a reformer Pilates has the ability to offset like the load, because it can use springs. So it's a nice way to work into that. So that was the quick question. What can one? I'm just not too sure on the question about what can one replace with yoga. Sorry.
So from a spiritual standpoint,
From a spiritual. Okay,
so they
cool.
don't agree yoga is for Christians. So instead of yoga, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I think it's so interesting. So the spiritual component, I always ask the question, if God created everything, then this has actually come from God originally. It's just man's interpretation of the thing that's made it not its true intention. Um, and so there's got to be something about the form of yoga, not the practice, but something that they're doing that works really well. I always ask myself, is it the breathing? Is it the stretching? What is it about it? But if we're talking from a spiritual perspective, then I think the Pilates is very scientifically based and it's a lot more about growing muscle, whereas a lot of yoga is about stretching and breathing. If people don't have the muscle density, I wouldn't be putting them into yoga, because then we're going into that tendon stretching that I was talking about. And usually, then finding that balance point of neutral gets a little bit complicated. So yeah, I think Pilates is quite healthy as a point.
Thank you, Jay.
Cool. So I'm not too sure how much time have I got, Lillian? What's the
You have still time.
Cool. Okay, amazing. So I think just to kind of wrap up on today, and the encouragement is just asking you, when you overview your own life. You can look at things like your family genetics. What are some things that I'm probably going to be pre-exposed to because of my makeup? What are some of the things that are my strengths, and how can I leverage these accordingly? What are some areas that I've probably neglected because it's just been a little bit too difficult? And therefore, if that's the case, what is the first step? And then I just focus on that, because just like learning to drive originally, you've got to learn how to use the gear stick, what foot to use, how to steer, how to indicate. There's a lot of parameters, and it's the same with exercise, but eventually it becomes second nature. And so my encouragement to you guys is simply that slide, which was the walking. Try and just get 10 minutes in, 15. If you can do 20, amazing. If you are doing that already, then beautiful. What questions can we ask ourselves to progress, and what is a healthy amount of progression for our reality? And then if we're not doing it for ourselves, then who's in your life that you can do it for? Because your example that you set, it could be that it inspires your kids. It could be that it inspires others in the world around you as well. So in terms of just an overall health perspective, the way that I present myself to the world, the way that I look, the way that I interact, those things for me are really intentional, because if I was to be here as a fitness coach and I was saying these things, but I didn't present myself in a certain way, it can be quite questionable unless there's context as to the why, which my ankle could have been something that was a reason for me to leave fitness and just say this is too hard. But when you go to injuries, which is what I wanted to talk on, we're all going to get injuries at some point. It could be a little niggle, it could be we slept funny, we fell asleep in a plane and our neck was slightly like kinked. I often think towards injuries as an environment that we're not prepared for. So instead of it being a negative, I'm trying to frame it in a way that I can then do it better next time. It's just body's feedback, and our natural response as a human is to step back and say, oh, that wasn't quite right. Instead of that, can you change your mindset to be curious enough to try and understand what led to the environment that allowed that to happen? And then you can prepare for something, and then the next time you're less likely to get caught out in that environment. So I think our mindset, as you do more and you learn, you start to see these patterns and these factors that start to piece together. Breath work's really important, just because of obviously like being able to self-regulate. And if you've never done fitness before, or you've never prioritized it, simply like a blood check at the doctors could be a really good place just just to get your baseline levels and see how your body's operating. What are your iron levels at? How are your kidneys functioning? What is your body telling you about your habits so that you can make some changes? And then I'm quite a natural person. And so therefore I'll go away and I research what foods, what environments I can do to help contribute towards those being less next time, or in a better position. So I work in a curious way towards the body because it has a lot of signals it can tell. So yeah, that was everything that I had set aside for today. But I'm very grateful for the opportunity.
Well,
And
thank you, Jake. I have a question, and just ask if anybody has any question as well. Thank you so much, Jake. That was such an amazing session. By the way, Temi Tokwe is on the line, and he's saying hello to you as well.
yes, bro, I saw you there. So good to see you.
Just a quick one. You mentioned about sleep,
Yes.
and because especially coming from the kind of background that we come from, there's so much emphasis on hard work and sleeping
Yes.
less. And I'm very guilty of that. I don't know how to sleep for 7, 8 hours. I just can't do it. So I just wanted you to highlight a bit on that. How important is sleep to our well-being?
I think a very healthy balance, like each individual requires different amount of sleep and recovery. There's a really, really big push about you've got to get 8 hours a day.
Yeah.
I think at some point you can hyper focus on that reality versus am I waking up feeling rested and good to go the next day? Um, if you're sleeping really well and really efficiently, and you are waking up ready to go the next day, like not groggy, not brain fog, you're not still aching and too sore, then are you recovering is essentially the question that I'm asking. If you were to keep that up consistently for a period of time, let's say a week or 2 weeks, would you still feel that rested, or actually would your tank start to empty over time? And that's where the awareness for me is really important. Um, I'm kind of like I'm an environment person, so like I try a hack that I do is 9:30 at night. My phone goes down so that I'm not on screens for the last half an hour before bed, because then my brain actually gets to naturally wind down. You can use things like a really hot shower before you go to bed that then puts your body more likely into a deep sleep state faster. So you can use these like couple of little hacks. I know like the Japanese culture, they focus on quality of sleep, not length of sleep. A lot of our Western culture, with so much stimulation, is saying 8 hours because I think the quality of sleep is so low.
Okay.
People are sleeping in like these really fluffy beds that pretty much just has their whole body concaved and their spine's not neutral, and or they're twisted and they're a little bit out of whack,
Yeah.
or they're really overstimulated and they're having sugar before they go to sleep, and therefore the quality of that sleep gets less. So I more so encourage people. Uh, I do three at my last meals, usually 3 hours before I go to bed, because then that way
Well,
my
3 hours
body,
before.
yeah, I'm pushing it. Like I'm very aware. Um, but sometimes like 2 hours or like an hour and a half would be the most grace I would usually have with people if they want to have a good sleep. But in that it also, and sorry ladies, it means it's like the no snacks just before bed sort of vibe. Um, or we leave that as a weekend treat for doing well in the week. Um, but I think like those parameters, if you were to put those in place for a week, you would actually start to notice your sleep cycle getting a lot more effective.
Okay.
So yeah.
Fantastic. I just have some questions on the group chat. So if you have any question, this is your opportunity now to ask Jake. You don't know when you'll see Jake again. So ask your questions now to the big coach. And Emmanuel Wise says, thank you, Jake, for a wonderful presentation. Please, what can be done to heal injured tendon for over 50s?
Okay. Tendons are depends on if it's injured. There's multiple types of injuries. So there's tears, there's strains, there's like a pull, there's misload. Like sometimes if a tendon's load force is this, but our posture's out and it's side loading, it can cause a lot of discomfort. So it's like, is it discomfort? Is it a tear? Is it a rupture? Without the context to that. So I don't know if the answer to that's there, but tendons, usually the way to heal them is time under load, depending on what tendon it is.
So
And
it's on the knee and
on
it's
the
pulled.
knee,
Yeah. Pull.
is it like
So you said it's
ACL?
pulled. It's pulled.
Okay, so was it done by hyperflexion?
In the step on the stairs.
Yeah, okay. A lot of the time, strengthening the muscles around the knee, so your quad muscles. If you've got like I wonder if I can show this. Give me 1 second. Let that come down. So if you've got like I'm in a chair. In the gym, you've got like a leg extension, but you can put a band behind if you're at home, and just putting the band around the front of the leg and holding these muscles to engage. And it's really just small movements to get these to strengthen. A lot of the time, when the muscle starts to get weak, the knees, tendons, and ligaments are the twist point. The knee itself is usually a reflection of what's happening at the foot and at the hip. And so I would also try and just see maybe if you've got good glute strength, can you hold yourself standing singularly on a leg for that 20 seconds, and can you stabilize? If the answer to that is no, then that's when I usually go and try and strengthen other parts of the body to relieve that tension at the knee. It's probably like a 3-month like rehab process to go around that. Increase muscle activation, strengthen the hip and balance, and then you can use bands to stabilize from there.
Does that answer your question, Mr. Manuel?
Good luck.
Ceci is asking a question. Oh no, sorry, Alakito is asking a question. Any benefits of cold water shower or ice bath?
Totally. So once again, bit of a trend that's going around for a little while. There are definitely benefits to cold exposure. Cold exposure, I think I prefer pre-midday before 2 p.m. Because it's something that it wakes you up. So I think I did a test. I had a cold plunge in a sauna, and over a month I did a test of cold plunge in the morning, sauna in the morning, cold plunge at night, sauna at night, and my rhythm of flow throughout the day was a lot better with cold exposure in the morning and heat at night. The thing I like about the cold showers or the cold plunge is it forces your whole body to have to work together because you get that shock response. It also teaches you how to regulate under a stressful position, because if that real large cold hit happens and you lose your breath, it's like, oh my gosh, like, I actually like what's happening. But eventually what starts to happen is you're like, oh, okay, like, wow, I'm starting to get better in this environment. And then what happens is in your actual environment, is it going to be as stressful? You've learned how to regulate that response. So I kind of see the cold exposure as having multiple benefits. With women, there's a lot of conversation around period cycles. With the womb temperature, cold exposure being beneficial, not as beneficial. I used to work. I used to see a Chinese medicine lady who did like acupuncture back in the day, and she had studied like Western medicine and Chinese medicine, and she said a lot of women don't benefit as much from the cold exposure because of the ability to regulate to muscle density. Um, so the less muscle you have on the body is the faster the cold gets through. Whereas the more muscle mass that you have is obviously the better thermodynamic regulation that you have in the body too. So it depends where somebody's at. If somebody's naturally stressed, and they're quite upworked in the mind, and the body's really tired, then you're adding a third stressor to the body. So it's just being aware of your environment and your situation, around the why. So adrenaline junkies love it. And so if somebody's a high performing individual, they'll throw themselves into that and be like, yeah, this is another thing that makes me feel something. then I also ask the question as to why is that good?
Okay, brilliant. Thank you for that, Jake. So we're not just going to take that much questions so that we don't burn you out and you can come back. Seth is asking, how can I fall back in love with going to the gym and working out?
My question back to you would be, what is it about it that isn't enjoyable? Is it the fact that the body's sore after training and we don't like that feeling? Maybe we don't like the gym environment. Maybe we can find a way to re-anchor in our mind being strong. Sometimes the work hard, drive hard personality we get yelled at in the gym, and sometimes we don't like that. But there are some environments that don't have that. And so I think, what would I do? I think when I look at myself and I ask, how do I be the best version of me? A component of that is to be healthy and strong. And it's only ever you versus yourself, and it's not you versus others. And so if I can anchor into your self-awareness about you doing one step forward each day, it's not about being at that end goal. It's just about doing something. It could be resistance training at home, and maybe that's where you start. It might be the only time you get in the day to yourself, in which case it's a good priority. But it's not easy. And I think the reason that I like the gym is because it is us intentionally doing something difficult, and we get to see the results of that habit. And so I never tell people that the gym's going to be easy, because it is a lot of work, and it's usually a little bit uncomfortable. But the reward long term is where I usually get people to focus.
Yeah, thanks, Jake. And you mentioned, I mean, from the beginning, you mentioned that we need to take care of our body because it's the only place we have to live. So by the time you think about that, and you also mentioned the why and knowing your why and all of that, and I think that will get us to do what we need to do.
Yeah, yeah, and I like, even within myself, I'm quite an independent person, and the idea of like hitting 60 or 70 and having somebody having to like help me, like do basic facilities or like day-to-day things, I use that as quite a big motivator as well. And there's obviously the natural aging process which happens, but your habits that you choose over time have got a clear relation to what your later years look like as well. So slow and steady progress will either be positive, or it tapers off.
Cool. And then Seth is also asking for sites. Kofo, if you could post the link. So Jake did, he put something together. Jake, do you want to tell us about the actionable steps, for example, the course you put together?
Yeah, sure. So probably 3 years ago, I did about my first course, which is just on these kind of points I've talked about today in a little bit more depth. And then there's a couple of examples of workouts in there. There is a gym 8 week. I would say that 8 week workout that is associated to it is probably a more medium starting point, because if you went in and followed that straight off the bat without awareness, then it could be a bit much. So I put like examples of workouts in there. I walk through awareness of training, but it's designed to just encourage people to take a step in their day. So that's just found on my website there. It works favorably for you guys because of exchange rate, but I can also give
so it's New Zealand dollars, right?
Yeah, it's New Zealand
It's
dollars.
New Zealand dollars. Okay.
Yeah. And I can also give you a link for the crew if they're interested, for a little discount as well. I'm not too, that sits there as it's usually an onboarding.
Yes, please.
Cool, will do.
Yeah. Thank you, Jake.
That's cool. And honestly, like, if you guys do start down this journey and you start like making these changes, please like message me, because I want to encourage you guys in the way.
Okay, cool.
Like, hey Jake, I lost 2 kgs, or I put on a kg of muscle. I've started breathing better. My sleep's improved. And when you share those things, it encourages other people to be like, wow, they made that change from that seminar. And actually, this has been the result of it, because this is an
Yeah.
anchor point in time.
And I'll also share your Instagram page as well.
Yeah, sure.
So people can, yeah. So that's the link
I
above.
talk a lot more smack on my Instagram. It's not as professional, so don't expect this level.
Even your Facebook as well.
The fitness one, that stays pretty kosher.
Oh, so you have a fitness one.
There is at the moment. I'm in the process of redoing that, so there hasn't been
Okay,
much
cool.
activity.
Okay,
Yeah.
cool. So I think we're just going to take two more questions, and that's so that we don't bond Jake, because I'm sure he's been talking for over an hour now. And Jake is like, these guys want to get everything out of me just for one session.
That's great.
That's what Africans do. So somebody posted this question, and a person said thermodynamic body control is related to muscle mass. Is that why the over 50-year-olds in London keep the heating on maximum indoors? This is from Suari. He sent it to me privately. Yeah.
I love it. Thermodynamic body control. So one of the things when we talk about the cold plunge is you're putting the body into a state where the blood flow goes around the organs, and that's where you get that shiver. When your muscle is almost like a blanket around the body, it allows you to be able to regulate a lot more effectively, as well as blood circulation. So as people get older, blood flow usually starts to restrict because they're less active and they lose muscle density. And so usually that's why people prefer warmer environments, whereas most people will walk in and be like, oh, well, this is way too hot in here. Is to keep that base level body temperature more comfortable. So, but yeah, I can imagine most people will either go towards warmer environments or crank the heating up when they do get older. Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. I mean, somebody asked a question about, do you get the same benefits from 8 hours uninterrupted sleep and 8 hours interrupted sleep? I think you answered that question. That is more of as opposed to the number of hours, right? That's what you said about sleep in summary.
Yeah, in summary,
so do you get same benefits from 8 hours uninterrupted sleep and 8 hours interrupted sleep? But you had mentioned for sleep is more of quality, not necessarily the number of long hours.
It depends on when, and this is like sleep expertise isn't my specialty. So all I know is you've got the states of sleep. Your deep sleep state, you don't want to be interrupted in that, but you've got your light stages of sleep that you can come in and out of quite easily. So I think for most people, usually your 11 p.m. until 3 a.m. is kind of that deep sleep state. Some people only get 2 hours a night. Some people can get up to 4. But that's kind of the healthiest deep sleep state that if you can avoid interrupting, then it's important. And then, yeah, obviously, like people who do shift work, I don't know if there's people on here, but even like sleep regulation of circadian rhythm is really, really important too, because you're obviously flipping your hormonal cycle into an opposite to natural state, in which case the environments like those stimulators that I talked about could be really beneficial, of like the heat before you go to sleep, the cold to pull you out, and those things.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. Cool. And then some Chema is asking, thank you, Jake. What are your thoughts on weighted vests?
I quite like weighted vests. I like them for obviously resistance training. I like them for walking. I'm not a huge fan of them in running, just because, like I talked about, the impact on the joints. Unless somebody's like a military person where they're constantly wearing that weight and the body's used to it for a very exposed period of time. It depends on the mass of those vests as well. So I do like them because it's obviously creating more a higher output expectation from the body for carrying that extra weight. So yeah, I use one myself. I've got a propulsion vest and I've got a weight vest. So the propulsion vest is like spring loaded and kind of like helps with spring. And then the weight vest I'll use for like walking. just to make me do a little bit more work for weight.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Jake. Kofo has posted your Instagram page.
Beautiful. Thank
Yeah,
you.
and the course as well is on the chat, so you guys can click on it. It doesn't take you out of Zoom when you click on a link.
I'll send you a discount code as well, Lillian, in case people are interested.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jake. And what else before I forget? Someone is posting. Are you able to take more questions?
Yeah, I'm chill.
Okay,
I've
that's
probably
fine.
got about another 7 minutes before I need to get into the day.
Okay, that's fine. So Daya is asking again, thank you, Jake. Does intermittent fasting support good health? I think it does. I mean, even if this is not necessarily your field, is it?
I think like when you guys have the chat with the nutritionist,
Yeah.
that's probably more beneficial. But I do personally, I do a 12-hour window each day. I will consume all of my food from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. And before that, it gives my body almost that old fight or flight instinct. It obviously depends on where people are at hormonally. It affects women a lot more from what I've seen. Some people do the 16-hour window, the 4-hour window versus the 6-hour. Sorry, maths is not my strong point. 4-hour window, 20 hours fasting. Has different benefits. It depends on what you want to achieve from a physical perspective with it. There's obviously the spiritual component, and then there's the physical. So.
Yeah, I think that she's probably referring to, like when you do 24 hours fast, like a water fast. There's so much case for 2-3 days going without food and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah, there's some really interesting research around that just for helping the body to do a proper clean out. And I think that that's quite healthy to do every now and again. If you go back 100 years ago, it was a luxury to eat as much as we do in a day and on a regular day in, day out basis. So I think it is good to put your body through. I probably do a 24-hour fast at least once a month. And then it honestly starts to just become easy and normal. It's more of a psychological process. But I also think if you're not naturally healthy in terms of overall well-being and the nutrition you put in your body, the fluctuation in chemistry in the body is a lot more vast. So you're going to see far more extremes by not being prepared than if you're healthy, your body can naturally go without for longer because it has the resources. Your muscles full of minerals, all of those, it can self-regulate levels easier. And so it can be quite dangerous for somebody if they haven't built the environment to go into it to all of a sudden do that because their sugar levels could crash. Same thing with exercise. You start after doing nothing and you could, there's so many different environments, which is why I think it's wise to start from where you're at.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Jake. I hope that answered your question.
Energy wise. Okay. Yeah. So energy wise, I probably haven't played around enough with the different types of fasting to be able to compare what works better for energy if I'm being honest. So I probably won't. I'm not the person to ask about that. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Amazing.
Thank you, Jake. That was amazing. Thank you for your time. Thank you for honoring us, and thank you for the powerful presentation. I learned a lot today. And we'll be sharing the recording to every single one. If we don't have your details, feel free to send us an email or reach out to the person that contacted you. Kofo, do you want to just put the email in the group chat? Because it's not everybody here that we have your contact. So if you want so I'm going to post this on YouTube later. Well, this is very, very good. I'm sure everybody, they're just saying thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure. Enjoy your evening.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. Thank you so much.
See you later.
See you later. All right, fantastic. Well done, guys. Thank you for joining this evening. So next week we have the dietitian. So we have somebody that is a specialist in our kind of African food, and she'll be taking us next week, Wednesday, on your diet. And then the upper week, which is the last session, it's on a Friday. So next week is on a Wednesday, the upper week is on a Friday, and the upper week is on your mental health, which is March the 21st. And the same time, 7 p.m. UK time, 8 p.m. Nigerian time, EU time. Thank you all so very much. If you're part of Better Place community, you know the drill. That we're people of honor, and we're just going to honor Jake, whatever it is that you want to give. Please pay into the community account and I will transfer to him and reference Jake. Thank you so much. I hope you were blessed. And like I said to you guys from the beginning, for those of you that were not here or not, they didn't join us for the program, the reason why I put this together was because when I was praying for 2026, one of the things that Yahweh highlighted to me is that this is a season that we need to focus on our health. Yeah, so I thought, okay, it'd be good to just put this together. But that's the background. That's the reason why this whole health series has been put together. And I've encouraged those in our community from the spiritual angle to take out one day in a week where you fast and pray for your health. I mean, for me, that is a commitment and a challenge as well. You take one day in a week where you fast and pray for your health throughout your walk on this earth. So not just for the now, but for throughout your walk on this earth. Just imagine you just take one day in a week where you're fasting and praying for your health throughout your walk on this earth as a consistent lifestyle, at least especially this year. And on that day you're fasting, you're also spending like 30 minutes praying in the Spirit concerning your health. Why? Because it's only the Holy Spirit that knows what you need to pray for. Your English prayer can only take you as much. But praying in the Spirit can take you to your old age. It can take you when you're 100. It can take you when you're 90. Yeah, so pray in the Spirit for 30 minutes concerning your health and just fast and pray. Before you start praying in the Spirit, you let the Lord know, Lord, this is what I've come to pray for. Please let your Holy Spirit give me utterance in this direction. That way your tongues has a focus and it has a target. So let's all be committed this year on this journey of taking care of our health. Thank you for joining. I would stop the recording